Welcome to this week's edition of the Sports Biz Report by the Drexel Sport Management Student Union. I'm Kevin Rossi, and I'll be your host and presenting on sports media. In the roundup today, I'll be joined by Kevin Murray, presenting on sports law, and Mike Proska, presenting on sports marketing. Later in the show, we will be joined by Drexel Sport Management student Zach Cintron, who will answer some questions about the upcoming NFL draft that kicks off in less than a week. Now for the roundup. It's been a busy week in sports media, and we will begin with the tragedy at the Boston Marathon. There have been plenty of journalistic faux pas during the aftermath, and none were bigger than CNN falsely reporting that the culprit had been caught. The ESPN team of Bob Lee, Jeremy Schaap, and Bonnie Ford handled the situation very well on the fly. For more, check out Drexel SMTSU's blog for Greg Monforti's post on Thursday. NBC has had a big week as well. On Tuesday, the network revealed its plans for their coverage of the English Premier League, which will include 6 live games each weekend, as well as studio coverage. With a price tag of $80 million per year, NBC looks to be getting their money's worth. NBC has also extended their deal with Notre Dame that was set to run out in 2015, and it will now be extended till 2025. Legendary NFL broadcaster Pat Summerall passed away at the age of 82 on Tuesday. Working alongside John Madden, Summerall became known as the voice of the NFL and went on to a Hall of Fame career. NBC's back in the news with Faith Hill leaving her post as the opening act for Sunday Night Football. Awful announcing blog speculated big names like Katy Perry, Beyoncé, Carrie Underwood, and Rihanna as possible replacements for Hill. And finally, the movie 42 opened last weekend atop the box office charts. The Jackie Robinson biopic garnered very good reviews and brought in an estimated $27.5 million in its opening weekend. Now over to Kevin Murray for Sports Law.
And this is the Sport Law segment. So apologies on beating a dead horse in my segment, but a little bit more conversation is needed in terms of the Rutgers scandal. Last weekend it was released that the former head attorney of Rutgers, John Wolfe, had resigned and will receive a severance package worth $420,000 from the university. That brings the confirmed severance packages from this scandal to over $2 million, with some more possibly coming. This could be on the upwards of another $1 million. Keep an eye out on Rutgers in the coming months, as it will be interesting to see how their newly hired head coach does. Eddie Jordan, former Rutgers and NBA basketball player, head coach of the Philadelphia 76ers and Washington Wizards, and assistant for the Sacramento Kings and New Jersey Nets and Los Angeles Lakers, has been hired by Rutgers today. He led Rutgers to the Final Four in 1976 as their starting point guard and played for the team from 75 through 79. Secondly, I want to talk about what happened in Boston on Monday and how it will affect the sports world. The bombings that happened in the Boston Marathon will be in the back of every sporting event planner's and host city's mind for a long time to come. It brings into question whether it is time that large-scale public events such as triathlons, bike races, and marathons be moved into controlled areas. Another option would be to control the blocks surrounding just the starting and finish line. Although this would remove a lot of the uniqueness of these events, being that they're free-flowing and open completely to the public, it may be a good first option to increase security for athletes, their families, and the fans. Lastly, this past week, Yvonne Gallardo, starting pitcher of the Milwaukee Brewers, was arrested on Tuesday morning in Wisconsin for DUI. Why is this a legal controversy and conversation point, you may ask? Well, Gallardo started the Brewers game last night. I'm really concerned about this possibly being a trend-setting occasion for Major League Baseball, considering the fact he's a top-tier starting pitcher in Major League Baseball, and he'll always be in the spotlight, and he'll be looked up by kids and young people. I'd like to hear others' opinions regarding the MLB and Brewers' decision to not yet make a ruling on whether he should be suspended.
Well, the MLB has handled this situation and all DUI situations with a sort of Saligian silence. I think it is time, though, for them to take a stand on the DUIs, because although it is the government's position to punish these people, and a $778 fine for a $5.5 million salary isn't, much of a punishment these days. But these players represent Major League Baseball, and they represent their teams and million and billion-dollar brands, and they need to be held to a higher standard than your average human being.
Definitely. I think when they're in the spotlight for fans to watch, especially kids, with a lot of teenagers being killed yearly through drunk driving incidents of DUI, I think it's definitely an issue that needs to be addressed both by the Brewers now with Gallardo and by Major League Baseball and all sport entities as a whole. So that completes the sports law segment today, and we'll move on to sports marketing.
Thanks, Kevin. I'm Mike, and I'm going to be talking about sports marketing today, focusing on recent sponsorship deals. This past week, Emirates Airline made their mark sponsoring the new shirt for La Liga club Real Madrid. But that was not their main mark of the week. They also announced a 5-year deal to sponsor the French Open starting this year in Roland Garros for the 2013 tournament. This deal designates Emirates Airlines as the official partner, including branding at the center court and panel signage on other courts. They will also have privileged lounges for corporate guests and boxes alongside the courts. Along with Emirates Airlines, AT&T made their mark in sponsoring this week. They announced a renewal of their sponsorship of the MLS, U.S. Soccer, and the Mexican Soccer Federation. This deal is valued at 8 figures annually, and with this deal, AT&T remains the title sponsor of the annual MLS All-Star Game. But they also will be becoming the title sponsor of the MLS Rookie of the Year Award and the major sponsor of the U.S. soccer team's what is expected to be the biggest match against Mexico this September. Along with sponsoring the U.S. soccer, they will also be sponsoring the Mexican Soccer Federation. Blending sports and entertainment with its engagement of Mexican pop music, they will be recording a song with Jesse and Joy, a pop duo from Mexico. And this will be played during Mexican national team matches.
Thanks for that, Mike. Now we're going to move into our guest section where we welcome Zach Cintron, Drexel Sport Management student, and he's going to talk to us today about the NFL Draft. So welcome, Zach. So first question for you. What are your ideas on the relative strength of the draft? Weaker than usual, stronger than usual? Where's it at?
This year's class is definitely weaker than prior classes, and you can see it instantly because there's no big names that they're able to put out there that to draw people in. Last year you had RG3 and Andrew Luck come in. It was definite 1 and 2 once the Redskins traded up. You knew that they were going for RG3, and you saw them plastered all over the draft posters. And this year it's just not as strong of a class, but that also doesn't mean it's a bad class. It's just not as straightforward, and the big name players just aren't at the top this year.
Absolutely, and you don't have that media-made controversy like last year with nearing the draft date with maybe the Colts will take RG3, but it had been Luck.
Yeah, that's true. Definitely true.
So since the draft is a little bit weaker than usual, how would you say that's affecting ESPN's marketing of the draft?
It's going to be rough for them to market it to general sports fans because the NFL fans, the NFL fans are going to watch to see who their player takes, but even the NFL fans this year, I think, won't be watching the draft continuously throughout the whole thing. They'll kind of just know when their teams are going to pick their players and tune in and tune out to see just their team's pick because it's just not a star-studded year. You're not going to get a guy like RG3 or Andrew Luck in the first round. You may get a guy that is more of a second-round guy, but it just fits your team this year. So what's the difference between 15 and 55 this year?
Definitely, and maybe getting some more casual fans tuning in on Twitter instead of the 3 days of the draft on ESPN. So going into a specific player, Tavon Austin's the receiver from West Virginia, his stock has been rising since the combine, ran a really fast 40. Came out on Thursday that he scored a 7 on the Wonderlic test. So I just wanted to get your thoughts, Zach, on what low scores do to a draft stock, and also maybe the idea of a player opting out of the Wonderlic.
I mean, usually players don't tend to opt out just because it's just the fad that everybody usually takes it, so everyone kind of does it. Plus, the media is not supposed to get the scores, so it's no harm to them in the media and out to the general public. But I don't really think a low score is really going to hurt you because when you meet with a team, they take you through all their plays, check for Tavon Austin, check his knowledge of the routes, check his checkoffs and everything with that. But if a player scores low, the Wonderlic's a test on everything. It's not just your football knowledge. There's some odd questions that you find in there, and it's one of those things that some people aren't good at math and English for the SAT, so they get a low SAT score. But, like they could go to college and do fine in a good college just because they're going for what they know, and that would be football for these players.
Yeah, everybody likes to point out the first couple questions on the Wonderlic, which is like, what's the 9th month of the year? What's 3 plus 3? But really, the whole test isn't like that. You're right. Yeah. And then you have guys like Morris Claiborne from the Dallas Cowboys, like we were talking about before. Scored very low on the Wonderlic, but he's a solid football player. It doesn't really translate.
And the Cowboys traded up to get him.
Exactly.
Like they give up picks to go up and get a guy who scored low on the Wonderlic test, which shows you it doesn't really matter as much as people think.
Definitely. All right, so we'd like to thank Zach for joining us today. That's all the time we have. Join us next week for the Sports Biz Report.